All right, we're getting ready to install some Hydroturf. I've got 2 sheets here. This is, I think, what they call mud is the color. Got a 3rd sheet on the way. I'm waiting on that 3rd sheet. It should be here tomorrow. So in the meantime, what we're working on is cleaning this boat up. So the first thing we gotta do is get all this grit and dirt out of the floor. So I'm vacuuming using the blower on it. But we're going to install this Hydroturf because I had gas spill out of this gas tank. If you have an edge with this open, with the tanks in the back, I encourage you to spin your gas tank around because the cap will leak, and if it does, it's going to eat your paint away. So I've spun mine around. So to fill it, I flip this up, and there is the lid that I open it. If it peels paint off back here, it's not a big deal. So to pop these pedestal mounts off, 11mm wrench here, and you break the nut, and when you break it, they can come off by hand after you've popped the nut loose. There we go. Rain, come here and take this for me, please. Set it on the ground out there. Alright, so I'm going to hit it with a soap water combination, then come back with the acetone. All the stuff out that's going to be in the way. I've soap and watered everything, from this to the floor to the high deck to the gun box. Everything's had soap and water on it. I've cleaned out all the corners where the Hydroturf's going to touch. The only thing, some people sandpaper them. I'm not going to sandpaper everything because mine's pretty worn, so I don't think sandpapering is going to be much different. But I do want to sandpaper where these holes are. It's the only place I'm a little worried about how it's going to lay if it's not sandpapered at least a little bit. So I'm going to hit these a little bit, but I'm not really worried about too much sandpapering at all. Alright, so originally I was going to go with the line. I think this is tan and black, something like that. It's brown and black, and I think it looks awesome. It would have really been cool, but I was worried about if the lines weren't perfectly straight, you know, if they were off just a little bit, it would bother me, and if you're going to be a perfectionist about it. So I ended up not doing these because I thought if I'm going to do it, I could do the molded diamond. This is mud molded diamond. I thought I could do it myself a little better, and the diamonds wouldn't show off if it wasn't perfectly square. Well, the only complaint about Hydroturf is what they send you is not perfectly square. So if you look down here on one end of your sheet, you get a full diamond of material, and then as you move to the right, that diamond gets smaller, and eventually it's just the tip of the diamond, which isn't a big deal except for if you're going to have to match up two sheets. Then it is a big deal, because you're going to have this weird groove in the middle where the diamonds don't match up. So the first thing I've got to do on all of my sheets is square off both ends. Both ends are like this, where it's not a perfect cut. So that's kind of annoying when you spend 130 a sheet, or 120 shipping and everything. So that's what I'm going to start right now, and then we'll see if we can't start laying out a template. So if you look at this, the sheets just aren't square. So if I'm at the bottom of these diamonds, you're running pretty good, and then all of a sudden you're halfway in the diamonds, and as you pull this down, so you get, it doesn't match up. If you're on the bottom of the diamond here, at the end of your ruler, that's the bottom of your diamond, you should be at the bottom of the diamond all the way across, and you're not. You can see there's a huge gap here. So that's one problem. Alright, so I've trimmed the sides. I've marked the big hole for the pedestal, and I just put a little cut where these holes are for the bolts. I think if I can just get a sliver in there, I'll be able to get the bolt through to thread on, and then we'll set the whole plate on top, and that'll help hold the Hydroturf in place. So now I'm going to very carefully peel this painter's tape off. Alright, so the template is wider than the sheet, so I'm going to have a joint on my deck somewhere. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to just cut out the big section, and I'm thinking about this seam here being where the seam's going to be. I'm going to have it where my trolling motor is, which is on my right side. So that's why this particular side is the short side, and then I'll marry a seam up underneath where my trolling motor lays flat. So I've just got it laid out on top of this section. I've got a little tape on there to keep it from moving too much, and I'll cut through that tape with my box cutter, and we'll see how it goes. Lit good. So even if that edge there is not perfectly straight, it looks good. It looks straight when you tuck it up under there. I'll put some books on it, try to flatten it out a little bit. Square. If you match these up, this diamond looks okay, the way those will go together if I was to move them. Those look pretty good. When you get down towards the bottom, you're totally off. Your diamonds don't match up, and it's going to look awful down on this end, because it's not going to be, they're not going to match up. So that's going to be an eyesore. That seam is going to be an eyesore. It's going to, at least I'll notice it anyway. Here's where we're at, just the first day of cutting it out. I am going to come down this line and give it a clean cut that's even with the end of the decking. But the problem is, anytime you're going to have a joint in the Hydroturf, it's not going to match up. There's just no way. It's not square. So even if it's, you know, even if it's matched up in one spot, as you run farther this way, it's going to get unsquare. So I couldn't find a way to do it. I've tried every way I know. So right here, this diamond is perfect the way it matches up. But as you move down, it's like the spacing's different. They get off. So down here, they're not even close. But up here, it's pretty good. So we'll have to talk to Hydroturf and see what their deal is. But that's day one. So this is the second full sheet of Hydroturf that we're going to put on. That's going to go on the floor. And like the first sheet, for $130, you get this unsquare sheet. It's goes from like the mid of one diamond through the top of it and into the next diamond as it goes across. And it's the same way on the other side. So with this sheet again, I've got to square it up. You'd think for $130 they'd square it up for you, but they didn't. So that's step one: square up the sheet. And it is really cockeyed, so that's going to be a tough call to get it perfectly square, so that we can then put the template on it and then actually put it in the boat. So they're so cockeyed, I don't know how you even can straighten them up. I don't know what I'm going to do with that. You can't even. Straight would be, if you're actually running those diamonds true, it's way off. They've printed their sheets off or something. My third and final sheet of Hydroturf is a relatively square. It's a lot better than the first two. So doesn't do me any good though, because I need to join up with some that are in the boat, and they're crooked as can be. So at least we got one good sheet, 1 out of 3. That's you know, not a passing grade, but it is something. That section went on pretty good. Templated just right. I'm going to trim just a little bit here. I've got to cut the spot for the pedestal out. I got to cut the back flap out on both sides. That won't be a big deal. So now I'm just going to put the template on this one and cut it out, and then the gun boxes, and we'll be done. I did pretty good. I made sure to put this seam here because that's where my seat will go. So my Millennium seat will cover all this up for the most part, so you won't see this. So that I can do. A little tougher up front, but maybe that trolling motor will cover up that ugly seam up there. This is what I got left over. A few scraps here. And I got that sheet there that I'm going to use for a cooler. So I'm going to have to make a little bit of a gap here so that the lid will open and close. So that's what I'm doing right now. And then I'm going to be done for the day. All right, I'm gonna hit these seams with matte black spray paint so they'll look a little better. All right, that should give us a kind of a black area where the seams are going to be, so that it won't look so weird. Alright, so the gun box area, catwalk area here is all good and glued on. Upper deck's glued on. Letting this finish up, drying up. Only issue I've had so far is that when this does get warm, it changes, the size changes, so it expands. So I've had to trim some as I'm putting it on. You can see like the end of this needs to be trimmed off. Wasn't something I'd really thought about and been told about, but the size of it does change as it warms up. I don't know if it's better to put on when it's at its longest and most flexible or what, but I've painted these seams. I'm letting this dry out a little more. So far I think these look good from where I painted the seams black. Seem to give it a little cleaner look. We'll get ready to start the floor. All right, so I've got the floor in, the gun box in, and the high deck in. Just chasing air bubbles around. I'm gonna wait till it cools down to do the back deck and the pods, because this does change shape as it warms up. And I think you're better off getting it down while it's cool than when it's stretched out from the heat and trying to contract back later might be a problem. So we'll see, because this has all been put down when it's hot. I had to trim some stuff, even though it was trimmed already to begin with. Just some things to think about before you make the jump into spending $400 or $500 in Hydroturf. Alright, the idea here is that this plate I just installed, which is clamped down, will keep that from moving around too much. So I think I'm done with the upper deck. Everything seems to have glued down good. Alright, got the trolling motor mounted back on. I think I'm done. At least as done as I'm gonna be on this project. Got everything mounted back up. Everything seems to be in good. Everything seems to be holding so far. Pods in the back. Another pod. Hinges here. Pinch myself a little there. couple things. The sheets weren't, 2 of the 3 sheets weren't printed right. Trying to square you down. So a couple things to remember. 2 of the 3 sheets I had weren't printed right, so I don't know that I'll use Hydroturf again if I am going to be doing this. And really the only place it shows up is this seam right here. It's just an eyesore. It'll always bother me, but the size of these do change as they heat up. They do expand, so I would cut them and install them at the coolest time of the day, or on a cool day, or in a shop or something. I wouldn't try to, don't cut them when it's cool and then install them when it's hot. This is 3 sheets. They were $130 a sheet, so you can figure up what that cost. And then contact cement. I used this contact cement right here. I've got, let's see, what is this, 32 ounces, and then I had a smaller one, 16 ounces, and it took exactly both of those to install it for a 1656 edge Diamondback. Anyway, hope that helps you make your decision, make your install a little easier.